U.S. Senator Tommy Tuberville joins us in an hour here on OutKick 360. Glad you're with us. We've been talking college football. We turn our attention to the NFL this hour. Paul, you sent a text. What was Kyler Murray's got a wrist injury? Did I see that?
Yeah.
I was glancing at that.
And he's not throwing fully this week. He will. Their plan is for him to go harder next week. Cliff Kingsbury said Murray's wrist is one reason he hasn't thrown much lately. We'll pick it up next week. Backup Colt McCoy has arm soreness and is resting. So they've gone down the depth chart in
Got
Arizona.
a few guys there, yeah. And keep in mind, Murray had COVID, I believe, so he's coming back after a 5-day absence, has a wrist issue. We'll see how that all works out. They'll be in Nashville in 2 weeks for a joint practice against the Titans. Buccaneers are here next week. John McClain with us every week as we talk NFL headlines. You can follow him on Twitter at McClain_on_NFL. John, hope you're doing well.
I am. Too bad the Cardinals don't have Josh Rosen anymore. He'd be their starter right now.
Terrific.
Be a great redemption story, John. Josh Rosen making a star for himself in Arizona would be great.
What do you make of arm issues for a much more high-profile quarterback, Matthew Stafford, who, his coach said it was an abnormal thing. Then he came back and threw, but not in team, and said Matthew Stafford said he felt good and was surprised it was such a big deal. But I thought Sean McVay set it up as a big deal the way he talked about it. And I'm certainly keeping an eye on it. I don't feel good about it.
Everybody is. And from what I read, he has pain on two sides of his elbow, and that's not good. And yet he threw some balls with that pain, and he looked great. And I'm thinking, well, if he's got that issue, why did they let him throw some balls in practice? They need to rest him. He doesn't need to play in the preseason. He's got all his receivers back, just like Aaron Rodgers. Now, Rodgers might need to play. He's not, but he might because he has new receivers with Devontae Adams going. But I think the Rams are going to be just fine in preseason without Stafford, and everything has to be geared up to that regular season opener.
So, John, I was reading today, I think Adam Schefter had the tweet previewing Hard Knocks Episode 1 tonight with the Detroit Lions and said that in this first episode, Aiden Hutchinson is singing Billie Jean in front of the entire team, and that HBO people, producers, say it is the most entertaining moment in the show's history. What do you think about that, and how are you anticipating or not anticipating this Hard Knocks season?
Well, I've seen every episode of Hard Knocks in preseason. I didn't watch any of the regular seasons with the Colts last season. I just didn't have time, but I've never missed an episode because I think it's fascinating. Dan Campbell, the Lions coach, has a great personality. I'm not saying he's going to be Rex Ryan, who was the most entertaining Hard Knocks coach I've seen, but I think he'll be fun for people because the team's awful. And as far as Aiden Hutchinson singing Billie Jean, of course, they're going to put something out there to entice people because there's a lot of people that ain't going to watch Hard Knocks because it is the Lions who've won one playoff game since the 50s.
It's been a while. What was the recent quote? He wants guys that are going to effing bury you. That's what Dan Campbell told the media this year. Instead of the ankle biters, he wants guys who
That's a great quote.
Going to bury them.
And wasn't that preceded by we'll tread water as long as it takes to get in position to go do that?
When the Texans were on Hard Knocks in 2015, Bill O'Brien's second season, Bob McNair, the owner, limited him to 5 F-bombs per episode. And so O'Brien used those up really quick. And then he had to think before he screamed his F-bombs, which he did all the time. And when HBO runs it during the day, it's sanitized. So Bob McNair and his wife only watch the day version of the Texans on Hard Knocks.
John, let's consider the division for a moment. Who's the team in the NFC North, if the Packers take a step back, that is ready to claim the top spot? And it's early here, but I spent some time over the last 2 nights reading reports from every training camp. And the Packers' offensive line has struggled by all accounts whenever they're watching practice. Jenkins He started the season, or he started camp on PUP. He remains there. Bakhtiari, there's still no timetable on his official return.
They need him back.
They have wide receiver issues. Their rookie is still on PUP. They have some guy named Romeo Dobbs, who is the talk of camp at wide receiver. 10 days in, he's the star. He's a fourth-round pick out of Nevada. When do you start to look around and go, okay, Green Bay may not be the Green Bay of the last couple of years, even with the MVP Aaron Rodgers?
I don't buy all that at all. We haven't even started preseason. As long as Rodgers is healthy, everything else will be good because he's the best quarterback in the NFL. He'll make those other wide receivers look good. That stat about Devontae Adams last 7 games being out, they won 7 and averaged 31 points a game. So I'm not buying into the Packers slipping back. Now, the key is, can he win on-field advantage again? That division, the Lions are terrible, the Bears are terrible, and the only team that might be decent besides Green Bay is Minnesota. And the Vikings have a new head coach in Kevin O'Connell, a first-time head coach in Kevin O'Connell. And so we don't know what to expect from them other than they will not be a defensive-oriented team as they were under Mike Zimmer, and everybody will be watching Kirk Cousins in particular. But I think the only team that has a chance to compete for a wild card berth will be Minnesota.
I think the Vikings have the chance to flip the script a bit, to your point, John, because not only are they not going to be a defensive-minded team with a new head coach, but the talk is they're also not going to be run first, the run first mentality out of the backfield. But they actually have the personnel to do that. I know they have Kirk Cousins under a 1-year deal right now that's guaranteed, but the personnel I'm speaking of at receiver, they could pull that off if they do want to pass it more.
Well, they could, unless it's big games they got to win, because Kirk Cousins has a terrible record in big games they have to win. And so he looks good. He looks good when they're playing the bad teams in the division. His stats will be good. They always are. Maybe under Kevin O'Connell, he'll be a better quarterback and start to win some games that matter.
Roughly 2 weeks into camp, Ron Rivera fires his defensive line coach, Sam Mills, cites philosophical differences. He's had him on his staff for 12 years. So it's interesting that philosophical differences crop up. Looks like a typical Washington mess. What do you make of it?
Boy, I tell you, when I saw that, Paul, I was stunned, because Ron Rivera likes to run a smooth sailing ship. And to get rid of your defensive line coach right now, that's bad timing. That guy must have done something really bad behind the scenes, because philosophical differences, I mean, what's he talking about? I kind of think it was something else, and they let it be called philosophical differences, but that's going to be tough on defensive linemen.
Ryan Pales, the new general manager in Chicago, he's dealing with a lot of different issues, injuries, salary cap constraints. They're dropping like flies on the offensive line and at receiver. And then there's Roquan Smith, who has requested to be traded. He's the next guy to request this trade. He's got a contract issue. He says he's not valued by the front office. He says he's never met with anyone connected to ownership there, and that could help change his mind on whether or not he wants to be there. But you have Ryan Pales, the new GM who comes from Kansas City, who says, yeah, we're not trading him. What do you make of that, given the fact that the Bears have a pretty glim outlook right now when they've traded away their top talent and they're still looking for pieces through the draft next year?
It's amazing how much respect they'll be giving him when they give him the money he wants. It's all about the money. It's not about not meeting the owners. That's a hogwash. He wants to be paid like a top linebacker, and he is. He's really good. And you know what? I'm sure they'll pay it, because now if players squawk and they hold in or they hold out in the half season, they're getting what they want. I don't blame players at other positions. You see these diva wide receivers getting what they want. Why not go for it? Smith is a terrific player on a bad team, but I guarantee you he's going to get paid.
Well, NFL Network this morning, and I'm with you, he's going to get paid, but the question is, how's the contract going to be structured? Because the contract talks with Smith have been backloaded, and they have de-escalators based on performance, which is unusual for the top players in the league. I'm assuming what you're saying is those things will be removed.
Those things will be removed and they'll make it a fair deal. You can't negotiate with one of your top players like that because all the other players see it and they're like, man, oh man, if they give him that kind of treatment, what are they going to do for me? You want to be fair. You want to overpay for guys on your team who work hard, who do the job the way you want, because it shows his teammates, you do like I do, you're going to get paid. You're not going to get screwed. And right now, that's what they're trying to do to him.
Yeah, and Ryan Poles actually held a press conference, surprise press conference before practice today, and said, right now my intentions are to sign Roquan to this team. We're going to take it day by day. At the end of the day, we have to do what's best for this organization, but my intention is to make sure Roquan Smith is on this team. Here's what shocks me about this, John. Roquan Smith doesn't have an agent. Is this an increasing trend in the NFL that I wasn't aware of with all of these guys who are negotiating on their own without an agent? He's a really good player to not have representation.
When Laramie Tunsil did his deal with the Texans with no agent, he had 3 people advising him behind the scenes. None of these guys are doing everything themselves. If they don't have an agent, doesn't mean they don't have people advising them. I guarantee you, Smith has advisors. You pay them by the hour. You don't have to pay them 3% of your total deal. And you get a lot of help from the Players Association. If you need it, they have people there set up to answer players' questions, give them advice, tell them what players in front of them and behind them are making in the draft, tell them what other players at their position are making. So they don't come without a good deal of information. But I think they'll get that deal done. And I don't blame players because the money's so big today. I don't blame them wanting to pay people by the hour as advisors than giving them 3% of a $100 million deal to an agent.
Just some awful reviews, John, coming out of Foxborough for what's going on with the Patriots offense right now. Mac Jones this morning said, I'm going to figure it out. I always have. I always will. But sounds like they're fumbling and bumbling. I know they've changed some things up there and that it's really early and you would never count out a Bill Belichick team. But no offensive coordinator up there with the offensive experience. We all have some questions about how they're going forward. What do you think when you hear how bad things have looked so far?
I remember when they talked in the offseason about Matt Patricia, who's a defensive coordinator, but worked on the offensive side way back. And then they're talking about Joe Judge, special teams coach, who was a Giants head coach. So you have 2 former head coaches there with not much offensive background. They talked about them doing it. Now, there's somebody on that staff that I'm guessing Bill Belichick's not going to call the plays, and I'm guessing he could. But when you got a good young quarterback trying to take the next step in his development, you want to hire the best possible play caller, not to mention the best possible position coach. And it looks like they're shortchanging him. And you think that's not Bill Belichick doing that, is it? But I think you're right, Paul. By the time the season starts, they'll get this worked out.
John McClain is with us. There is still a lot to get to with position battles, issues in Tampa Bay on the offensive line. I want to hit on 2 standouts, believe it or not, that I've heard about from Houston, and John's seen every practice. 2 rookies that have shined through some headlines there. Philadelphia and how they're implementing A.J. Brown. He's certainly been a huge hit for the Eagles thus far during camp. And we will get to the other things around the NFL, including there's new ownership in Denver made official today, and the Pro Football Hall of Fame induction, which took place this past weekend. We'll get John's overall take of that and more straight ahead on OutKick 360. So, Chad, guess who you've got Kyler Murray, who's not going to play this weekend, and his backup is out. So Trace McSorley is going to start against the Bengals.
Former Penn Stater.
And then, for the last 3 quarters or so, Jarrett Garantano will be the quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals.
Finally time to see the real.
If there
Friday
is
night
a prop
against
bet
Cincinnati
on interceptions, take the over in that game for Arizona. I don't know if they do that for preseason games, but if there is a over 2 interceptions for Arizona, I would hammer the over.
Let's see what
in
we
that
can
game.
find.
Let's see if you can take that bet.
John McClain with us. Never bet against McClain, who it was better than 500 record last year against the spread. Someone was keeping up with it, John. It certainly wasn't you. You don't keep up with that. You give your picks and you move on. But someone told you recently that you had a very high success rate.
I do know the year before I was below 500, and the year before that I was like 40 games over 500, and I'd take 2 seconds to do those.
40 over.
If you were 40 over 500, you could make a lot of money for yourself or someone else.
I think that's the year he nailed the Super Bowl pick.
Just saw, it's funny you're talking about that because I just saw at Caesars Sportsbook, someone bet $264,000 on the Cardinals tonight to beat the Rockies on the money line.
Wow.
Which I immediately go to my app, and now I'm betting Cardinals.
FanDuel,
That guy knows something.
FanDuel is offering nothing except spread, money line, and over-under on Chiefs Cardinals.
Oh, man.
Very smart.
But I'll check the other.
Who are they playing? Who are the Cardinals playing?
The Bengals.
Bengals.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong game. That must be opening day.
Our betting fanatic down here, Jim Mattress Mac McInville, he's got, I think, $10 million bet on the Astros to win the series. And if they do, he gets something like $69 million, the biggest payout in history. Knowing him, he'll give most of it away. But it's amazing how popular gambling is today and how much some of these high rollers are betting. Matt can't even get anybody to take an entire bet, including Vegas. He has to fly around to reservations in Louisiana and put down $2 million at a time so people will take his bets.
Mattress Mac.
Mattress Mac.
Too successful. Oh, to be Mattress Mac.
Can
too
we have
successful.
him as a special guest on the show at some point,
where they
Joe?
would not let him place the bet. Oh, you could get us Mattress Mac on the show.
Come on.
Right, John?
Sure, I could get you Mattress Mac. He won $15 million on Kansas winning the NCAA, and he lost, I think, 13 on the Astros, but he hedges all his bets where he doesn't really lose anything.
See, I'm even less interested in all the wins and more interested in his routes he takes to go place bets to make sure he can get the bets placed because he's won so much.
Excuse me. Last 2 weeks ago, he was the featured speaker in Atlantic City at a high rollers convention. So while he was there, he put another couple mil on the Astros. It's amazing because I watch the Astros and I hope for his sake that they win it all, but I certainly wouldn't pick them to beat the Yankees, even though they've owned the Yankees in regular season. And then the Dodgers, they didn't do squat at the deadline, and then they just pound the Padres, who pulled off the biggest trades in baseball history at the trading deadline. And so I think this is going to be a tremendous finish to baseball. I think the Yankees and the Astros will beat the buys in the American League, and I think the Dodgers will probably win it all.
John, you're fine with the Astros against the Yankees. They just traded a starting pitcher who promptly shut them out 1-0 when he faced them that weekend after doing that. So that's a sign of things to come for the struggling Yankees right now.
John,
Paul.
While we're talking Astros, let's stay in Houston with the Texans briefly. I was reading where Dameon Pierce, the rookie, and along with Stingley from LSU, Derek Stingley at corner, are putting on a show in camp. Is that accurate? Have you seen the same thing?
Well, Jalen Petrie, the safety, second-round pick from Baylor, he's been a starter from the second OTA. And Stingley, they brought on slowly because of Liz Frank surgery. I don't think he's going to play Saturday night versus the Saints, but he goes full speed in practice now, and he just looks really good. They have him going against their best player, Brandon Cooks, most of the time in practice, so it'll help him make his adjustment. And I contend, and I've done this since the draft, I said Dameon Pierce will be a 1,000-yard rusher, and he will be a candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year because he steps into such a great situation. The worst running game in the NFL, the worst running game in franchise history, next to worst running game the year before. You talk about opportunity. He's got Marlon Mack, who hadn't done squat since like 2018 in Indy, and Rex Burkhead is his competition. So keep an eye on Dameon Pierce. By the time the Titans play the Texans, I think he'll be entrenched in the starting lineup.
John, we've all been to and attended training camps in years past. Media policies are ever changing. But I read something last night where I got very depressed. And then I started trying to find video just to see if it's accurate, and it's accurate. Brian Daboll, and I don't know how he's policing this, Brian Daboll is not allowing the media or fans to post video from practice because he feels like there is a true competitive advantage to that. And he admitted to the media he has a staffer that is in charge of going around the league and doing nothing but pulling video from fans that are attending other teams' practices across the league. I bring this up. The Titans open up against the Giants in week 1, so I'm sure they're pulling Titans video from fans as they sit there and film it when the media is not even allowed in yet. In your opinion, are we getting to a point where it's going to be all or nothing, where a coach is either cool and isn't worried about some guy, in a one-on-one drill being seen by the opponent, or we're just going to have close practices altogether where it is literally back to where we started, where it is the written word is how we're going to follow this, much like we follow college practices right now?
That's that Patriot paranoia still in Daboll now that he's a head coach. And I'll tell you this, we talk every day here in the media, when we look across the field at the fans, going from goal line to goal line, 20 rows up of stands in the end zone, wouldn't it be dumb for the Colts the first game not to have somebody in the stands taking video of it? Because fans can take video and post what they want.
Right.
Now, anytime the Texans do anything important, they go indoors. And there's a hotel right across the 2 streets at the end of the complex, the Holiday Inn. And I've been into up on the top floor when a friend of mine used to stay there, and you can look right out down at the Texans practice facility. So I think that's going a little overboard. And how is he going to confiscate a cell phone? Show me your pictures. That seems like that should be illegal.
Titans have so few fans now because of the space that they actually can monitor fans. They don't let fans shoot, and the media is only allowed to shoot stuff that gives away nothing in terms of formation or personnel or anything like that. So a lot of us are left to describe stuff. But I think it's crazy if you think you're giving away anything monumental like that. You're just getting your ass out coached.
Also, aren't we take the paranoia angle aside? Aren't we giving coaches and players way too much credit to act like even if you ran some trick play or different formation in a practice and it was filmed,
go out and block it out?
Well, that the moment that happened, because you had one scout that was out there looking through fan video, that it happens in a game and suddenly you pick it off and run it back the other way because you diagnosed it right away as a player, as that special play that you saw in a practice. I just don't think that those things are spotted. It's an execution league.
Yeah.
I mean, game plan works, obviously. That's something that's important, but are we really thinking that players are going to spot that right away from one practice?
Or how about, so if you're so convinced that this is going to be used against you, how about outsmart somebody and put something out there that you think they're going to, if they're going to dissect it so brilliantly, then Brian Daboll should put something out there to trick somebody. It's too much.
I'll give you an example. When I was president of Pro Football Writers America, Bill Parcells wouldn't let his players of the Cowboys, he wouldn't let his coaches talk, and he wouldn't let the media watch practice. And so I met with him to try to get him to change it. And I reminded him, I said, how did you win 2 Super Bowls with all those newspapers and radio stations and TV stations watching practice and talking to your coaches, and now you're not, and you haven't been back to the Super Bowl? He said, are you saying that's why I went? I said, hey, I'm just saying, how did you do it then? Why have you become paranoid now? And he didn't have an answer.
I think deep down, John, if the coaches were 10 years removed from coaching, they would admit that, yeah, it really did make a difference. But they also don't want in the back of their head that they did anything possible that hurt their chances of winning a game or that would hurt their team. So the paranoia is that if I'm not doing this or I'm doing something different that the other guy in the division isn't doing, that I'm doing something wrong and it's going to come back to bite me, even if logically they know that's probably not the case.
And it's also a control thing. We know that they are just freaks about control. A lot of them are. And it makes them feel like they're more in control.
Yeah, but another part of it, too, is the best team of the last 20 years was caught filming practice on tape.
Yeah.
So, like, and they're also an organization, speaking of the Patriots, that have a walkthrough before home games on Saturday at their stadium where they go through with security and clear that whole thing out. Or if you're setting up a radio broadcast, screw you. You got to come back tomorrow because we're about to have a walkthrough and we're closing up everything.
While you guys are discussing this, I just thought of a couple of lines I just wrote in a song. Paranoia strikes deep into your life. It will creep. What do y'all think?
Paranoia.
Is there a song there?
Self-destroyer.
Yeah, is that a song you used to cover, John, in your band?
It sure is.
Now, you talk about secret videotapes that people want a hold of. Screw football practice.
Yeah.
We want tape of your band.
John, please break out the bass.
Thank goodness there was no
for us.
such thing as tape back then.
Yes.
Audio tape there was, I hope.
John, J.K. Dobbins has been removed from their PUP list in Baltimore. How big of a deal is that for Lamar Jackson in the offense?
Well, considering they lost their top 3 running backs last season, and I've never seen that any time in my career. And Dobbins is right on the verge of, they hope, becoming one of the top backs in the league. And you talk about hungry, and you talk about needing him for balance. I think he can mean so much to that offense. And there's a good chance Baltimore, with John Harbaugh being a great coach, is going to win the AFC North.
What are your expectations for Lamar Jackson, given the fact that Hollywood Brown's now in Arizona, their top receivers, Rashad Bateman, who's they're hoping takes a big step forward, and then starting opposite him is either James Proche or Devin Duvernay right now?
My expectations for him are at least $231 million guaranteed.
Yeah, tight ends.
Because if Watson gets 230, he deserves 231. He's been a great passer down the middle to his tight ends, specifically Mark Andrews. And Hollywood Brown had 90-something catches last year, even though Jackson was out. And I didn't understand why he wanted out of there so bad. Some people tried to blame it on Jackson. Of course, he said no, but that's a good team. They're always going to be capable of winning any game on their schedule.
Up until about noon Eastern today, the wealthiest owner in the NFL was David Tepper, who is worth an estimated $16.7 billion. And he has now not just been surpassed, but overwhelmed as the new wealthiest owner in the league is Rob Walton, worth $59.8 billion. So they've made that official in Denver. Here are the richest owners in American sports, the top 5. Tepper is 5th at 16.7. Steve Cohen with the Mets is at in number 4 at 17.4. Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, is worth an estimated 20.3. Rob Walton of the Broncos is now the 2nd richest owner in American sports. And number 1, Steve Ballmer with the Clippers, who's worth $92 billion. Not only have they just voted in a new ownership group, but they voted in an owner that now puts them in a different stratosphere. It's a fraternity in and of itself, but when you go from the wealthiest being 16 to now over 50 billion, that's incredible to think of.
I always wondered what happened to Paul Allen. When he died, Paul Allen was the wealthiest owner, just like Steve Ballmer from all that Microsoft stock. Ballmer just built his own building for the Clippers. You'd like to see more of these multi-billionaires do that. And some owners, that's why you have problems with family squabbles. Some of those family members want to sell, get that money, and live an even better life while they can. And that's why he has so many bad situations going on behind the scenes.
And Ballmer, whenever he passed, who do you mention him, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Paul Allen.
Paul Allen.
Yeah, Paul Allen. Excuse me. Whenever Paul Allen passed away, he gave away most of whatever was going to be inherited. So he gave it all away to charity, and now the Seahawks and the
Trailblazers.
The Trailblazers. Thank you. They're eventually going to sell both of those franchises.
His sister in charge of that.
Because the trust isn't able to keep up with whatever it is that they're currently trying to do with those organizations. So that's where the money went. It went to charity.
I thought the coolest thing about Paul Allen was the name of his company, Vulcan Inc.
Yeah.
So, John, am I being too nitpicky when I immediately see $59.8 billion for Rob Walton? I think, how much of that is liquid? Like, if he had to just give someone cash right now.
He had to come up with 30% of the $4.5 billion. So he probably had to sell a little stock.
He's worth 57.8, 59.8. So that's a small percentage. I think paying it all in cash wouldn't be a problem, but what percentage of that 59 could he just get right now and give to someone is always what I'm consider with these super billionaires.
Those things are way beyond my comprehension, Chad. I'll let you ponder.
When we get him on the show, you better believe I'm asking Rob Walton. If I needed a check for this amount, could you cover it right now without digging into any other offshore account or selling any properties?
Well, if I'm not mistaken, the Tepper sale went really smoothly, and that was partly because he owned a share of the Steelers already, so the vetting had been done. This one went awfully smoothly. It's pretty impressive how smoothly it can go when you're, exponentially more rich than some of your ownership brethren.
John, is it
all they care about?
We now have, the Walton family is now represented twice in the league because Kroenke is married into the family too. So his wife, is his wife Walton's niece, Rob Walton's niece or sister? I don't know which it is, but they're connected there. And technically, Kroenke's wife is listed as the owner of the other pro franchises that he owns because he can't technically do it as the owner of the Rams and have another franchise under his umbrella too, under his name.
Nuggets, maybe?
Yeah, Denver. And then
every time I hear Walton, I think, good night, John Boy.
Me too.
And Walton Kroenke, I'm trying to see the relationship to Rob Walton. Let's see.
Yeah, but they're in now. So they're now in L.A. and Denver with the highest sale.
It's niece. Okay. Bud Walton's daughter.
Okay.
Sam Walton's niece. So cousins, I think, would be the proper. Rob Walton is a cousin.
Okay.
First cousin.
Nonetheless, connected to the money chain for sure. The power couples in L.A. there. Tampa Bay, they swapped Shaq Mason for a free agent departure in Alex Kappa at right guard. But they've now had some changes to their interior line because they may be starting a rookie at center based on injuries sustained. I was reading a Pewter report. Aaron Stinney, former Titan, was starting. And it appears as though he's been benched because he's the guy who injured when the Ryan Jensen. He did something where there's now a four-way battle at guard. They're looking for someone to step in at center. What do you make of the challenges in front of Brady? Brady's always been known for making the O-line better. At least that's the talk and what happened in New England. And they certainly had injuries that they overcame there. But when you think of 45-year-old Tom Brady and the veterans that they had up front last year and the fact that Jensen was coming back and they've had some guys retire abruptly, what do you make of the O-line and that being maybe the weak link of the offense right now?
It's the shortest path to Brady. Brady turned 45 last week, of course, and they got to be worried about it. I'm told they are worried about it. New England always had a lot of change up front because of injuries, little ineptness, players leaving for more money, but Brady is able to withstand it, and I think he'll withstand it now. He's got Godwin. He's got Evans. He doesn't have Gronk. A lot of people still think Gronk might come back if they need him, but I'm not saying they're going to win a Super Bowl or go to the Super Bowl, but a great quarterback can overcome so many issues.
John, the issue in Cincinnati last year was their offensive line. And other than Lyle Collins, we still haven't seen him practice yet because of his back issue. There is really no major storyline out of Cincinnati other than their quarterback. They're waiting on him to come back from off-season or right before camp. They had the surgery, the appendectomy for Joe Burrow. Other than that, there is no major issue or roster concern from their training camp start. And I don't think many are predicting them to get back to where they were.
I certainly wouldn't, because teams that lose a Super Bowl don't go back unless they're the Patriots. I always thought those teams that lose a Super Bowl should be the hungriest teams in the NFL. They should be doing the most to improve whatever it costs them to lose. And the Bengals made a lot of changes in their offensive line, but nobody's talking about them actually getting back to the Super Bowl. Maybe they'll surprise us, but I certainly wouldn't pick them.
John, I've been following the quarterback reps in Pittsburgh. Mitchell Trubisky's been treated as the starter. I keep in mind most teams are 10 or 11 practices in now, but we take what we can get right now. And it's worthy of discussion because Pickett is working as the third guy. He's not number two. He's working behind Mason Rudolph, who the media says has been the most accurate quarterback in Pittsburgh camp. Is this a major issue right now to you, or do you find it no big storyline yet until we get to September?
I mean, it's the same as Malik Willis here, who's a long-term project.
Except one guy's a first-round pick and the other guy's a third.
Right.
And one had a lot of starting experience. I think at some point, every team that has good intentions to let a quarterback watch and learn, they don't all have Alex Smith in front of them going to the playoffs. So I'm thinking about, if not quarter of the way into the season, certainly about 6 or 7 games in, Pickett's going to start because he is the future.
I feel the same way. The other big rookie who's made a splash and impact just across the league is Karlaftis. Go figure, the Chiefs have a guy fall to them. But they have Karlaftis now who's turning heads in Kansas City camp. They have Frank Clark, who's apparently more like he was 2 years ago than what he was last year. And then they bring in Dunlap, who said he chose Kansas City because he has the best path to the championship. They could be a force up front, much like they were in the playoff run a couple years ago, John.
And it could be August All-Stars who fade
Could
when
be.
the play starts for real.
But we've at least seen 2 of the guys do it for real. In Frank Clark, whenever he was traded, and Dunlap's been very productive over his 9 years or whatever it was in Cincy.
If they're going anywhere, it's not because of Frank Clark or Dunlap. It's because of one guy. It's going to be Patrick Mahomes.
Justin Tucker getting the new highest paid contract, and not by $1, by $1 million more than any other kicker in the league. But Chad pointed it out yesterday. It's well deserved because of the accuracy and the distance that this guy kicks with.
And the fact he kicks outdoors.
Yes.
Tucker and Vinatieri are the greatest kickers I've ever seen. Some of the others with the most points and field goals kicked most of their career indoors. Vinatieri kicked more than half of his career indoors. But a guy like Tucker, nailing them in the snow and the wind, to me, he is the greatest of the great.
John, final 30 seconds. Leave us with your best recap, best moment of the weekend from the Pro Football Hall of Fame induction.
Bryant Young's speech, which was moving, especially when he talked about his child who passed away. And Dick Vermeil was like 1 more minute away from getting yanked off with a hook.
He had a lot of thank yous.
I read he thanked everyone and then
Did
complained.
he thank y'all? He missed me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
me
did he? I mean, he thanked everyone, but yet complained that he wished he had more time to thank more people. That was the.
Everybody's
the
doing,
thing.
thank God you don't.
Yeah.
And this is coming from John, who says we should not complain about the length of speeches. So you know it was long if John thought it was long.
That's right, Jonathan. But what bothers me is when they repeat things. You know, he thanked Sal Palo Antonio twice. Ron Jaworski's right next to him. He didn't thank Jaws. and a lot of people in Philadelphia are angry about it.
Interesting.
When you think everyone, every little omission, people are going to really point out when you think everybody else.
It's a tough spot.
John, we certainly thank you for joining us each and every week.
Thank you.
Jonathan, Paul, Chad, thank you guys very much as always. I look forward to talking to you next week.
Follow John on Twitter, McClain__NFL.
This is why if I ever get in a Hall of Fame, I'll thank no one. There will be no omissions because I'm not going to thank anyone. That way I don't leave anyone off the list.
Coming up,
got to
SEC
everyone.
quarterback accuracy and who is atop the list. The first 2 or 3 guys I think will surprise most SEC fans, college football fans out there, guys who are returning. That's next on OutKick 360. Which SEC quarterbacks threw the most accurate passes to the intermediate level of the field last season? OutKick 360 rolls on. Intermediate, 10 to 20 yards. Most accurate quarterbacks from last year who returned this year. The list surprised me. Guys, in perception-wise, where I thought they would be on this list are a bit flip-flop. So there's the teaser. But, Chad, if you're thinking just starters right now, the highest catchable pass rate on throws 10 to 20 yards downfield, who would you guess would be at the bottom? We're going to go with 6 guys.
At the bottom?
Yeah, at 6. We'll go 6 to number 1.
Oh,
and we'll
man.
unveil this.
Mike Wright would be towards the bottom.
Okay.
Of returning guys, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Mike Wright.
All these guys started games in the SEC last year.
It's tough to know. Anyone that's at South Carolina that's not Spencer Rattler. Does that count Luke Doty?
They're not on the
Would
list.
be on that list?
They're not on the list. Top 6, Paul.
Top 6 or bottom 6?
It's the top 6, the most accurate passers.
Okay, most
Levis.
accurate.
Most accurate.
Bryce Young, KJ Jefferson, Hendon Hooker. I'm just going with the best quarterbacks that are returned.
Will Levis.
Yes. Okay, so number 6 on the list, Max Johnson is number 6. 79.1% accuracy rate. Threw a catchable pass 10 to 20 yards downfield. Of course, he's now at Texas A&M competing for that position. Number 5
Son
on the
of
list.
Brad Johnson.
That surprised me, though, that he's in the top group, but yet is considered, just a serviceable option in Texas A&M in that battle. Number 5, and I thought he would be way higher, Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, 80.9. I would put, in thinking about this, I'm thinking 80.9 to me would be towards the top. He's 5th.
Yeah, that's
a good number.
That's a
That's a really good number. He's 5th.
And honestly, that surprises me that it's that high because a lot of his passes are either quick, a quick screen, quick hitter, or deep down the field.
I would
that
also
10 to
say,
20
like,
yard range
I
is-
wonder if somebody like him is at 11 yards and the next guy's at 19.
Number 4 on the list from Mississippi State, Will Rogers.
Makes sense.
81.3. So virtually the same accuracy rate for Hendon Hooker and Will Rogers.
Quick.
Bryce Young is at 3 as a returning starter, 82. And then this surprised me at the top. Will Levis from Kentucky, who struggled at times last year. Between 10 and 20 yards, 83% of the time he's throwing a catchable ball right in the intermediate rate where your guys are catching and going. I mean, that's the heart of college football right there.
Big part of that was Wan'Dale Robinson also, who's gone.
Here is the big surprise. KJ Jefferson is number 1 in accuracy rate of all returning starters.
That is a big number.
At 85.2%. Highest catchable pass rate for throws 10 to 20 yards downfield. That shocked me.
I guess 4 of the 6. I guess the good news is, 4 of the top quarterbacks, 5 of the top quarterbacks are right there at the top. The order is surprising that KJ Jefferson is 1, and it's not Bryce Young or Will Rogers at number 1.
That's a terrific graphic, and I like the reveal as we go. Very well done.
It's very nice.
Hit us up on Twitter at OutKick 360. Shout out to Moulton there for flat out getting it done. Coming up, we have Senator Tommy Tuberville, who's about to join the show. We discuss NIL and the bipartisan bill that he's trying to work on at Capitol Hill. He's with us next on OutKick. OutKick 360 continues across the OutKick network. The crew all here at 6th and Peabody in Nashville. We'll get back to more college football and NFL discussion on the field coming up later this hour. The discussion over the last year or so, guys, has been name, image, likeness off the field. We know that Commissioner Sankey, Paul, you and I chatted with him at SEC Media Days. He was on Capitol Hill recently meeting with senators, meeting with those in the House, and trying to come up with an idea and a structure of what federal legislation might look like. Well, we have Senator Tommy Tuberville on the line, former head coach at Auburn, at Ole Miss, Cincinnati, and Texas Tech. And now he is fronting a bipartisan legislation to help try to get us down the path of guardrails for name, image, likeness. Coach Tuberville, great to have you on.
Good morning. How are y'all?
We are very well. And you did tell us, hey, still call me coach. I appreciate that.
Yes, please do. That's what they call me up here. So after 40 years, I guess I've earned that.
Yeah, I know you have talked with Coach Saban, with Greg Sankey, with the Pac-12, and many others. Is the feedback and the ideas that you have heard and that you have brought to the table virtually all the same, where everyone's just trying to come up with an idea that everyone can get behind?
Yeah, you know, I hate that the federal government has to get involved in this. We've stayed out of it, or I have. You know, I know quite a bit about it, obviously. The Commerce Committee, who is oversight for this, obviously has been involved. I'm on the Education Committee, which we have not really had a lot of discussions on because we've left it to the Commerce. A lot of people try to get involved. Yes, I've talked to committees. I've talked in the NCAA. I've talked to coaches. I've talked to players, former players. I've talked to commissioners, athletic directors. And I was hoping that they could come up with something, but you can't get a consensus. You know, everybody wants it their way, and it's not possible. So I sat down with my staff. We talked about it, you know, the direction we would go. You can't do anything here in Washington, D.C. unless you have a bipartisan approach. It's not going to happen. Joe Manchin got a lot of power up here. He's on the Democratic side. He and I sat down one day, and we got together, and we both came to the conclusion we got to do something. We've got to help. He thinks that he can deliver people on the left. I hopefully can deliver people on the right. Try to get this done. Now, we're not into the money part. You know, we're not trying to limit what people can do. What we want to do at the end of the day is come up with some standards and rules for all 50 states. That's what we can do in the federal government. We can pass a bill, and it takes 60 votes to pass a bill, then it has to go to the House, that all 50 states have to go by these guidelines. Right now, there is no guidelines. It is it's a disaster. Just listening to coaches and what's going on, and parents and players, you know, getting involved, which fine. But at the end of the day, we want it fair for everybody in 50 states, and we want to make sure that we look out for two things: the student athlete and their education. Those two have to be involved. So we're not here to invent the wheel. Again, we're going to do our due diligence. Joe Manchin and I sent out a letter to a lot of people last few weeks, all over the country. Some people are saying, well, this is just the SEC deal. No, it's not. I don't know where they got that from, but this is a proposal that we will possibly put into law that can help and guideline everybody in all 50 states in this country. And at the end of the day, I hope we can do it. We might not be able to pull this off, but there's going to be a lot of input. This is not going to be my thoughts, not going to be Joe Manchin's thoughts. It's going to be a accumulation of people that work with this, that should know what the best thing is. Again, we're also going to talk to athletes and their thoughts and their understandings. And if we can make it even for everybody else and make it a little bit more simpler, but not do away with any money, the cat's out of the bag, it's Supreme Court says they are allowed to make money off their name, image, and likeness. And I've always been for players making money. I wish there was a way that we can make it equal for everybody, men and women, in all sports to do this. But the one thing I do not want to happen is for us to not have something, whether the NCAA does it, or the commissioners does it, or we do it here in federal government. I do not want us to start losing financing for Olympic sports, women's sports, the so-called sports that have to use money that's built up by the big sports. We need to make it to where everybody can be satisfied and make it equal for everybody, and still be able to have the country that we know we have in terms of college athletics, because it is something that most of us hang our hat on every year to watch and take pride in.
Would you like to see it go to what seems to be the original intent, that it's for athletes once they're on campus being able to then make money? Or are you okay with the idea that it's used as a recruiting tool to lure kids to campus?
Well, one of the biggest complaints that I'm hearing from coaches all over the country, assistant coaches and head coaches and athletic directors, is the possibility that some coaches are going out and offering inducements to players in their homes or whatever, of making a certain amount of money for the first year, second year, third, and fourth year. And they can't really back that up. I know the collectives, the groups across the country that are being hired by some of the universities are really the ones that are supposed to do that. But we got to get that out of a recruiting inducement. Again, once they get there, they should be able, like the Supreme Court says, make money off of their name, image, and likeness, but not for a recruiting inducement to what school that they're going to go to. Other problem we're having is while this thing is originated in the last couple of years of the NIL, now we have the transfer portal. And you put those two together, you're asking for huge problems down the line. So we're not only working with name, image, and likeness, but we're also looking at this transfer portal of how to make everybody, as many people as we can, happy, to make it fair for everybody to be able to recruit and possibly keep players on their campus to, number one, where they can stay and get an education. Because say you get 40 hours at one school and you transfer, you might lose all those hours and you have to start over. And there's no way you're going to get a degree after that. It doesn't happen in college sports. So we've got to look at the degree, we've got to look at the education, and we've got to look at the well-being for the student athlete.
Coach, you had mentioned that you'd rather the federal government not be involved in this, and that your desire would be for the NCAA, all of college sports, to come together on a consensus to figure this out without you being involved. But you also said you're going to go to all 50 states and try to gain a consensus from those 50 states to make your decision, where ultimately this could come down to the working relationship with you and Senator Manchin coming together on an agreement of what that consensus may be. So how is the relationship with you and Senator Manchin in terms of coming to an agreement after taking in all that input and figuring out what's best for the college athlete?
Yeah, we might not be able to get a consensus once we get all the information in that after this letter we sent out. And again, people, they want to put their 2 cents worth in, that's fine. Now, we're going to have, between his staff and my staff and some of the committee staff, we'll probably have over 100 people working on this from Washington, D.C. That's how it happens up here. You don't write a bill and a couple of people write this up. It is complex to get it done. And then you have to sell it through committee. And then you have to sell it to the individual senators across the country representing their states. And so if we plan on getting anything passed, there's going to have to be a lot of salesmanship to where Joe Manchin, who played college football, he understands sports. Myself being the only one up here that's worked with NCAA, worked with commissioners, worked with athletic directors, and we've just got to do the right thing for everybody. But it's not going to be easy to put that together. Joe and I talk pretty much every day, and we built a pretty good relationship over the last year or so. people are going to trust him on the left. Hopefully, people trust me on the right that we're doing it for the right thing. But we're not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. And as I said at the very beginning of this, I wish we didn't have to do this, but the NCAA looks like that they're afraid of lawsuits and they can't get everybody on board. We're not going to be able to get everybody on board, but we're going to do the best we possibly can. If we get a consensus, if we think we can do the right thing, at the end of the day, we might not be able to do it. Joe and I might look at each other in the eye and go, hey, this is impossible. We can't get enough people on board to get this done. But I hope we can, and we're trying. And so this time last year, I said, no, I had coaches calling me. I said, no, we're staying out of this. You don't want us involved. But after a year and seeing what's going on, it is getting worse. It's going to destroy college sports as we know it, men and women. You're going to end up with smaller groups, smaller scholarships, less money in the universities. Facilities aren't going to be as good. There's going to have to probably be some people that's going to have to understand that they're going to have to work hard behind the scenes to sell this, in some form or fashion. But again, we're going to give it the college try. We're going to do the best we possibly can to make this work, because I think this college sports is one of the reasons our country is as successful as it is.
So the NCAA is devoid of leadership right now with Mark Emmert stepping away. Coach, what's the ideal type of leader to lead that organization? Some have pointed to former coaches, conference commissioners, an attorney. What do you think in terms of leadership of the NCAA moving forward and the right type of person to lead that organization?
Well, experience in any situation leads to leadership. You can't have somebody that's been a president. I like Mark Emmert. I knew him when he was at LSU. I had a lot of discussions when I was coach, and then he went off as president. I think that's kind of the formal way to do it. If you're going to get something done for all levels, for men and women, you need somebody that got their hands dirty, understands it, that will go out and fight for the student athlete and the sports. Again, you're talking from equestrian all the way to football, and it is a hard nut to crack. But you try to make everybody happy. But you're talking about, I would say, averaging 450 to 500 student athletes on every campus across the country. Not just Division I, but Division II, NIA, Division III, whatever they call it now. We want to do as much as we possibly can for every student athlete to make it fair, but also be able to finance all these sports. And I think that's something that we're going to have to really, really look at as we start paying players, because a lot of the money that normally goes to some of these Olympic sports and some of these women's sports, the money that normally goes to them is going to go to the athletes and the bigger sports. It's going to be hard to keep some of these sports alive. I hope we can do it. And again, that's one of the reasons that Joe Manchin and I are going to try to get it done.
United States Senator Tommy Tuberville from Alabama with us on OutKick 360. You mentioned speaking with Coach Saban, he's good friends with Senator Manchin as well. The thing that has surprised me from the onset of name, image, likeness is even the power brokers, I would refer to Saban as that, of the head coaches in the sport itself are pointing to their roles and influence diminishing. It's not just the tier below the Power Five. Even the top guys in the sport, the guys who are having success with name, image, likeness, are looking for regulation, are looking for guardrails, so to speak. And I guess, Coach, I would think if everyone's looking for some type of leadership and regulation with this, it should be fairly easy to find a consensus. Maybe I'm dead wrong on that, though.
No, you're right. It should be simpler than what we're stating. Again, we're not getting into the money part. We want to get into the scenario of when you can do it, why you can do it, how you can do it, basically. As we said, the Supreme Court said they can make money. So, again, that's going to happen. We just want to make sure that we cover all bases to kind of put some parameters on what we used to have. When I was in coaching, all my coaching career, we had a recruiting calendar. When you could start doing things, when you could evaluate, when you could talk to players, how many times you could talk to them, when the signing dates were, what they could do as student athletes. And you just can't wipe all the rules off out of the rule book. We got to have some stipulations of what you can do, what assistants can do. And then, of course, you're talking about a federal law here. I mean, you're not talking about NCAA law. And if we get to this point, I mean, it has to be upheld. I mean, it's a pretty sticky situation when, a law is a law. And again, it has to go through a lot of parameters. It's got to be voted on, discussed, debated on the floor, House, Senate. Then it has to be signed by the President of the United States. And so there's a lot of things that you have to do to make this work. That's the reason I said earlier, one person can't do it. I could have gone out there and tried to do this on my own. I'd have been wasting my time, because you have to have help from the other party. And Joe Manchin is obviously a guy that's gotten a lot of things done since he's been here. He understands it. And we've both talked to coaches, not just Coach Saban, and not just coaches, but players and assistants and all over the country, from East Coast to West Coast. And some people have different priorities. But again, we're not telling you how to recruit. We're just going to try to put some parameters where you have some guidelines to go through. And I hate that we have to do this. And at the end of the day, we might not be able to do it. But we're going to do our due diligence to see if this is the direction to go, and see if we can make it happen.
I'm sure whenever you took office, there were many other things on the agenda that you want to attempt to accomplish on your state's behalf. And you mentioned that there were coaches who were calling you looking for some type of regulation or legislation. You said, no, we're going to stay out of it. It's a pretty quick turnaround that less than a year from that moment, you feel like it's time to step in and do something. Is there a specific moment over the last year that you remember where you're like, man, this is way more than what I thought it was going to be?
Yeah, well, just talking to coaches back in the summer, I would call some of my friends of mine that were head coaches or assistants, and knowing that in the month of May, you're out and evaluating players, going to high schools, talking to coaches, watching players practice in spring practice, all those things. And I'm calling them going, hey, where you at today? I'm raising money. What? You're not recruiting? No, we got to raise money. And it's kind of dawned on me where we've gone with this. When you've got coaches that's supposed to be doing the right thing for high school players and high school coaches, that instead of evaluations and giving people opportunities to earn scholarships, out there raising money to try to pay only just a few of the top players. And the other one is, the other thing that really upset me was coaches talking about, we're going to cut back on signing high school players. What are you talking about? Well, we're going to build our football team off of transfers because of the transfer portal. So it just dawned on me. So we're going to start working on transfers. We're not going to sign 25. We might sign 10, and we're going to take 15 transfers. So what you're doing now is you're eliminating opportunities for high school kids that worked all their life to try to get that football scholarship. You're limited the potential percentage of what we used to have from, say 100% of the high school athletes signed. Everybody has 25 to possibly 60 to 70, even 50% of the past recruits that you had signed. Instead of taking high school kids, you're going to take transfers. And so that bothered me, because I know the opportunities that kids have when they go to college and have their scholarship paid for, and they get a good education, they work their way up, they learn leadership, they learn how to play with other people. Now you're going to potentially cut a lot of those people out. That's not what this country was built on.
Without federal regulations, how powerful do you fear some of these collectives might become and change kind of where the competition is in the sport, at least on one level?
Yeah, Joe and I talked about this, and I think that's one thing he and I have to do. we know really very little about some of these collectives. And we're going to either try to get some to come here to Washington, D.C., where we can sit down and let them explain their programs to us, get their ideas, the good and the bad. You're going to need these groups because I want to get coaches out of raising money. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. They don't need to be doing that. They need to be spending time with the players, the athletes, training, working on their education. When they're out there raising money, that is the wrong message that we're sending to college sports. If people are going to handle money, it should be the collectives or somebody like the collectives. Again, I don't know enough about those yet, but I'll tell you here in a few months, I'm going to be an expert on it. But I'm going to learn from I'm going to learn from them. I want to hear their thoughts. Obviously, they're going to make money out of it, and I'm fine with that. But I'm also want to make sure that these student athletes are taken care of, not lied to, not taken advantage of. That is the sole purpose of what we're trying to do through this whole process. So, again, there's a lot of things out there, as you guys know. Y'all been talking about it. I'm sure almost every day for the last year and a half, some degree. But at the end of the day, we need fairness for all schools, big universities and small universities. And we can get the fairness for that. I think we can accomplish something here. And again, it might take some tweaking as we go along, but we got to have a base where to start. And before we put this so-called future bill in front of the Congress and the President of the United States, we want to make sure that it's the proper thing to do, and it will have an opportunity to work and make it fair for all.
Senator Tuberville with us. On the way out, Coach, I guess the good news, bad news is there is no deadline of a timetable here, but I know you'd like to get this process going. What's the next step here? When are you and Senator Manchin going to get in a room and actually come together on what you've gathered?
Well, again, there's going to be a lot of conversations in the next couple of months. I'll actually, instead of going to enjoy football games this year, I'll go to some games along with Joe, and he'll do the same thing, whether we go together or separate, and talk to presidents and athletic directors and talk to athletes, get their input. The deadline for input that we sent that letter out was August 31st. But that's just from the people that we sent letters to. We'll talk to hundreds of people. My staff will do the same thing. Joe Manchin's staff will do the same thing. We have lawyers on our staff. They will be talking to compliance. We'll be visiting with the NCAA. There's a lot of groups out there. Athletic directors have formed committees that have been working on this for a year. They ran into a wall, but we want to find out, we don't want to start from scratch, if that makes sense. We want to get their input to say, okay, you've already done that. You don't think it'll work. Let us look into it, see if we can go a little bit different route. So American Football Coach Association, I was president of it, 6-7 years ago. Think that, we can use their database, maybe have Zoom calls with a lot of some of the coaches on Mondays, on an off day during the season. But we've got to have input for everybody. And again, players and parents are going to be much of the input as anybody. We get their thoughts about the first year and a half, 2 years of how this is shaken out, and see the good and bad of what they've gone through, and see what they suggest. Again, we don't have the answers. The answers will come from the people that actually have already been there and their experiences.
I'm sure whenever you reached Capitol Hill, you didn't think you'd be back on game days making a circuit in college football this quickly.
My goodness. But, I'm on the Armed Services Committee. I've traveled around the world twice, getting ready to go around the world again, going to different bases all over Africa and some of these others. We're Chinese Communist parties pushing against Taiwan every day now. We've seen how that's going. We've got Russia and Ukraine. I'm on the Ag Committee where we're getting ready to do the Farm Bill, which is huge for all the farmers across our country. I'm on the Health Committee where we're talking about the virus. I mean, guys, there's problems in college sports, but we got all kind of problems that every day we try to put some common sense to, and that's hard to do. And we're $32 trillion in debt, on top of that. So this is a complex job, and we'll be working on obviously other things as we work on this. But that's the reason you have staffs, and that's the reason you have people that you lean on to get things done, to do some things that you don't have time to do. But I promise you, we're going to do our due diligence on this, and we'll put best effort towards it, and hopefully we can come up with some kind of conclusion.
We'll be following from afar right here in the heart of SEC country in Nashville. Thank you for the time, and I'm sure we will check back in down the road to see how this is going.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, just give me a call in a month or so, and we'll give you kind of an update and the direction we're headed. Hopefully we're at a good spot in a couple of months, and we have some kind of ideas. But hey, we could be at ground zero at the same time. You never know how it goes up here. So, but we're going to give it the old college try.
Thank you, Coach. We appreciate the time.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Yep. There is United States Senator Tommy Tuberville, who has been our guest. Paul, we saw Coach Tuberville. Chad and I did. We were at the
Auburn Club.
the Auburn Athletic Club for the OutKick the Tailgate, and he was having dinner with his family. We did not interrupt. We were going to treat it the Nashville way. If you see someone out, you don't interrupt. But we did contemplate. Going over and introducing ourselves.
He was.
I think at Nashville, everybody contemplates too. Then they say no.
I feel like Tommy Tuberville was always the coach that kind of had a sort of cool sideline demeanor at all times, like seemed very calm. And he was sitting there, I remember, legs crossed, telling stories to everyone at the table, and was not overly, boisterous with his arms or anything, just very calmly holding court at the head of the table.
I was thinking, I saw everyone that was watching saw the headshot of the senator. Is there a former college coach that looks more like a senator than Tommy Tuberville in that photo?
Nick Saban looks pretty senatorial.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the height for it.
Yeah, there's like Tuberville's got like this slender build
to it. It's like the Green Berets.
No, I know what Paul's saying, though.
Yeah,
it's
man,
that's a good
job.
Yeah, Pete Carroll looks very senatorial, presidential. I'm sure we could go through a list of coaches that kind of have that look about them. I'd put Derek Dooley on that list. He's not a current coach.
Dooley does.
But Dooley looks like a U.S. senator.
I will say the one thing, I don't want to say he's covering his back, but he said multiple times, we may not be able to do anything. So he's got his doubts. Everybody's looking for it, but he said it's complicated, and we just may not be able to do anything. And if the federal government can't do anything, it shows you just how much college sports are the Wild West right now.
Well, I think he's saying he's pointing to what he's already seen or heard about. Since 2019, there have been 8 federal NIL bills filed. This is nothing new, but it's the first bipartisan try. And so I think what he's saying is if we can't get down the road with a bipartisan solution, then it's going to be state legislated and not federal.
And that's where it's going to be completely uneven.
Yes.
You're going to see the states that have
split.
that are going to rise.
It's really hard for college programs to deal with 50 different things as opposed to one.
And this is what we talked about in the very beginning. Every writer and everyone who's pushing for, let's get these guys paid. Let's get these guys paid. Let's get these guys paid. Okay, now what? Because once you successfully make that happen, it's not this endless flow of money that just keeps going to everyone. You're going to rob from someone. And ultimately, that's what he's talking about. Olympic sports, women's sports, programs. I mean, there are going to be football programs that simply can't sustain at any level. And it's just going to have, here's what we're going to end up with. In 10 years, we'll have 40 football programs, and that's it. And if you don't get a scholarship to one of those 40 football programs, you're not going to get a scholarship to play football.
And look, none of us are fans of the NCAA on any level. But if they actually had a powerful leader who could set this up, you wouldn't need the government involved if the programs believed in the NCAA also.
Yeah.
But it's probably too far gone.
Coming up, we're going to switch gears, and we will talk NFL. We'll continue our preview in the AFC East. The Patriots are changing more than just offensive coordinator this offseason. Josh McDaniels is now with the Raiders First time in a decade that they're changing play callers. But there's something even bigger that's been around for 21 years that they are attempting to change right now in camp, and it's been a complete disaster.
Terrible.
That's next on OutKick 360. Streaming live at OutKick.com. Glad you're with us across the OutKick network this afternoon. Our thanks to Senator Tommy Tuberville for the visit. We're recapping that, no doubt, after the deadline passes at the end of this month in an open letter they sent out to many of the college commissioners and influencers across college sports. Our preview of the NFL team by team continues. We're in the AFC East and the second half of the AFC East after yesterday discussing the Bills and Dolphins. Today we go in depth with the Patriots and the Jets. And we start with New England. Last year's record at 10-7. They lost the AFC wildcard game in blowout fashion to the Buffalo Bills. They've added Devontae Parker. Jabril Peppers is at safety. They drafted Cole Strange on the offensive line. They lose their offensive coordinator of the last decade in Josh McDaniels. J.C. Jackson is now a Charger, and Ted Karras is also out at center. I think what many forget is because Belichick's there and they're returning Mac Jones, that they're just inserting a guy that's going to be running the same type of offense that McDaniels was running. That is not the case. They are installing a new offense in Foxborough. And Thursday night against the Giants is going to be fascinating to watch. It's a 6 p.m. Central kickoff. The Giants are having their own offensive issues. And Matt Patricia has been using the walkie in practice at New England, calling in plays, and again, replacing McDaniels. And you've got Mac Jones, who is going into year number 2. The defense, by all accounts, and those covering the Patriots, some very good reporters there, by all accounts, the defense is outplaying the offense every day at camp. It's not going in waves and up and down. It's every day the defense is having its way. They have offensive line issues. Their run game has looked atrocious because their run game is now utilizing more of a wide zone scheme. And, I mean, you have to go back 21 years to when Charlie Weiss was installed as the coordinator there. They have been doing and running a different course of action out of the backfield of some combination for the last 2 decades, and they are switching that up this year. For what reason? Your guess is as good as mine. But Belichick was quoted yesterday about, are you willing to abandon something that's not working well? It's practice 10 of 11. He's being asked this, and the quote was, if you're spending time on something that's not productive, then yes, you need to change it or find something else. He's being asked that about the run game and the changes to more of the outside zone scheme. That is alarming, to me anyway, that not only are they changing up their offensive coordinator, they're now trying to change up things on the offensive line, which is also where I believe Patricia's helping out, right?
They've had trouble, without Dante Scarnecchia, who came out of retirement for a while and is gone. Look, the running backs have been good. Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, James White. Not popular in the fantasy community because it's a different one every week based on the matchup, and that's one of the things that's made the Patriots good. They can find a way to run against virtually anybody with the combination. I'd be surprised if they don't find a way to do that again. To me, the thing that needs to happen is they need to finally hit at wide receiver with Kendrick Bourne and Devontae Parker, and they need to get the 2 tight ends they paid a bucket load of money last year, Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, involved in the passing game in an effective way for Mac Jones. But I'm really down on this team. I mean, you mentioned Jabril Peppers. He can't run. Devin McCourty is a great leader and has had great success for them, but he's 100 years old, and he surely can't run much anymore. They're lacking speed, and they're a team that's had an ability to cover a lot of stuff up for a long time. How long does that last? And the biggest question is, who's coaching on offense, calling plays, and tutoring a new quarterback?
Well,
I'm not going to be surprised to see them really have a poor season.
I don't think that they are hiding the fact that Patricia's calling plays. I mean, he's out there. He's the one that's actively calling plays offensively. You have Belichick that stands behind the huddle and listens as Mac Jones gets the call and relays it to the huddle. There are reports that Mac Jones is throwing the football in the dirt several times throughout practice because he doesn't either have enough time based on pressure or the receivers are just off kilter. And, their own website is quoted in recapping a practice by saying that Mac Jones looks, quote, out of sync and sometimes uncomfortable.
If they're a
That's not
playoff
good.
team this year, guys, I think it'll be a real feather in Belichick's cap again, because the teams that are trying to get ahead of them, and we've talked a ton about what Miami's done, about what the Jets have done, they've added a lot of pieces. Added a lot of pieces that look better on paper than what the Patriots have done. So is he going to outcoach those two teams again, as he's done for years and years and years, with lesser personnel this time, chiefly at quarterback? Or are those teams finally going to close the gap on him?
If they're going to make the playoffs this year, Devontae Parker is going to be huge and a huge addition to their pass game. Mac Jones is going to take the step up with the unknown of Matt Patricia calling plays for him. It's going to have to happen. And they got to get faster on defense. Paul, you talked about it. They were one of the top 3 or 4 defenses in the league until the final 5 weeks of the season. They lost 4 of their last 5. They got exposed. Teams that have the run-pass option, the RPO game, lit them up. The Bills did not punt in that playoff game in Orchard Park in that win. Acquiring Mack Wilson from the Browns gives you a bit of infusion of speed on the back end, but there's still some slow spots on that defense that worry me, and then all the uncertainty around Patricia calling offensive plays for the first time that we know of. It's just there's a lot up in the air with New England, and that as a franchise, I'm not accustomed to saying that about going into a season where you feel like you know what you're going to get in a number of areas. There's just a lot of question marks.
They're good at winning chess games, Hut, but this is speed chess.
Jalen Mills is one to watch on defense. He's having a really good camp. Now take that for what it's worth, because the offense has not been good. But Jalen Mills in the secondary is making a name for himself there.
And again, they let a premier player walk in J.C. Jackson, which is what they do all the time. But what are their fans going to say? Boy, I sure wish we had J.C. Jackson out there. As they're watching other teams throw with success as they try to develop more cornerbacks beyond Mills.
Coming up, we preview the Jets. Plenty of additions, a young overall team, and one big injury yesterday where Mekhi Becton is likely out for the year. What does that mean? That is next on OutKick 360. Mekhi Becton went down with a knee injury on Monday, and reports are he's going to miss the year. Tackle for the New York Jets. OutKick 360 rolls on, and we continue our discussion of the AFC East with the New York Jets. Zach Wilson comes back for year 2. They've added Laken Tomlinson on the offensive line. They've drafted well. We all raved about the Jets draft. Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson are there. DJ Reed was brought in at safety. They don't lose too much, but they lost Becton yesterday, and that could mean disaster for production issues for their young quarterback that they're trying to build around.
How about going and getting Dwayne Brown? I think it sounds like a sensible conclusion. I think you can reach some kind of price compromise there and maybe save face. I don't know that Becton, they were counting on him playing significantly better. He's had weight issues. He's had injury issues. That was kind of a cross-your-fingers guy for them. But you got Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, better weapons around Zach Wilson. A lot of it's hope. It's always hope with the Jets. But, the draft was routinely rated as really good people. They did a good job of having really good picks, and they didn't get panned for any of them. Elijah Moore from last year, really nice. They've got good talent for a change. Now, can you believe in the coaching staff that was assembled last year? Can you believe in Douglas as in leadership? They've got as good a reason to feel good about themselves as they've had in some time. But the Jets always jet, right? So you kind of wait for something to go wrong. And it's not like the division's down. The Patriots may be down a little bit, but Miami's swinging the same way they're swinging. And the Bills are the AFC favorite.
Yeah, Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, the Shanahan West Coast style, need multiple running backs. Michael Carter's a good one. And then bringing in Breece Hall, and then great for the offense.
Right, and Breece Hall has been very good to start camp.
And Elijah Moore taking the next step is going to be important in the slot for this team. George Fant's going to get his shot. Western Kentucky standout at tackle now that Becton's out. So, yeah, it's Paul, you mentioned it. It's always hope with this team. Garrett Wilson should be someone who comes in right away and is really good for the Jets. You got Zach Wilson making headlines for his taste in moms in the offseason, which is certainly something to talk about. Yeah. But, yeah, look, I'll believe this is a roster I feel like should be, and you could say this about a lot of teams with 7 spots to the playoffs now, but we should be in mid-December talking about them with a chance of making the playoffs.
Well, keep in mind, George Fant was already starting at tackle. He's starting at left tackle, and now they've had their right tackle go down. So the
right
backup,
now, Connor McDermott.
Well, Connor McDermott's banged up right now. He's going to miss 1 or 2 weeks, and it's not a good option if he's starting week 1. He needs to be the swing guy that comes in and is the backup to either side. So they've got some issues now, and on top of that, while you're right, Paul, Dwayne Brown was a Pro Bowler last year. He's going to be 37 at the end of the month. They need Zach Wilson to take over and manufacture some things that I think their offensive line's not going to be able to do given the current state of things. The run game should be okay. Breece Hall and then having Michael Carter, Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, and Garrett Wilson are a great 3-pack at wide receiver. C.J. Uzuma is there. And the favorite target in camp so far for Zach Wilson has been Tyler Conklin, their second tight end.
When we saw a very bad Titans team go to New York and lose last year in a huge upset relatively early in the season, we saw some Zach Wilson qualities that looked like, well, you could see this guy doing things. He was on the move a lot. And I imagine they plan to put him on the move. And if the tackle situation doesn't get worked out, they'll plan to put him more on the move, I would think. But he's going to have to get himself out of some trouble and protect himself as much as the line protects him, perhaps. The interior line could be pretty good. So, you put some of these tight ends out there, chip, have the running backs help. A lot of teams have to do it. They don't want to do it. Jets maybe weren't planning on doing it as often as they're going to have to do it. Maybe.
They have a massive rookie tackle, and Max Mitchell. I don't know how he's been in camp, but he is. Yeah, he's the mountain from Game of Thrones. I mean, he's massive.
Fourth rounder.
Yeah. Rookie, the quote of the camp for the Jets, rookie Sauce Gardner, he was asked about his trash-talking tendencies and what he would tell the reporter if he was trash-talking him. He said, "I would not trash-talk you because I expect to dominate you." That was Sauce Gardner's response to the reporter. We'll dominate tomorrow's show just like we did today.
Love that mentality.
Back at it for OutKick 360, starting at 3 Eastern, 2 Central, right here on the OutKick Network.
Don't dominate the box. Stay out of it, but do lock your locks. Thank you.